bottom of Daf Lametes Samud Beis, Meisvek. The Gemara here brought a machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan regarding the geidel that was done for the Shnei Seirim, one that goes LaShem, one that goes LaZazel. So what's the machlokes? Is this geidel ma'akiv? You must do this geidel, and without it, you can't designate them to be for what they're supposed to be. So Rabbi Yanai said that it's ma'akiv, and Rabbi Yochanan said that it's not ma'akiv. That's basically what the Gemara said. But here, the Gemara brought two lushaynus about this, because this subject regarding the geidel, whether the geidel must be done or not, is connected to a machlokes Tanoim, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Nechemia. Rabbi Yehuda and Nechemia also discussed regarding all of the avodah that was done by the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, is it all a must or not? And what was their machlokes? Rabbi Yehuda says that only the avodas that are done inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim must be done the way it says it in the Torah. Any avodas that are done on the outside, if you change the order, you don't do it exactly the way the Torah says, it's not ma'akiv. Rabbi Nechemia says any avodah that the Kohen Gadol does on Yom Kippur with the big day lavan, with the white garments, whether it's inside, whether it's outside, it's either, wherever you are, it's ma'akiv. So in the Gemara here, there were two lashonos about this. In the first lashon, the Gemara says that the machlokes between Rabbi Yanai and Rabbi Yochanan is only according to Rabbi Nechemia. Because Rabbi Nechemia says that even the avodah done outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Torah is very particular what has to be done. So the question is, do we apply that to the geidel as well? Because a geidel is not really a regular avodah. The geidel is just to determine which animal is going to go for what. So the question is whether that's ma'akiv as well. But then, in the second lashon of the Gemara, it said that even according to Rabbi Yehuda, that generally says that only the avodah in the Kodesh HaKadoshim was the Torah very particular about how it has to be done. But nevertheless, it could be that the geidel is actually more important than everything else that was done outside. Why is that? So the Gemara brought the thing that we learned yesterday was because it says Asher Allah Trei Zimni. Because by the geidel the Torah writes twice that you make this geidel, so therefore, according to Reb Yanai, you must do the geidel. It says in Rabbi Yochanan says no. Rabbi Nechemia holds that anything outside the Kodesh HaKadoshim is not ma'akiv. So the Gemara here is going to ask a lot of questions on this machlokes, and most of the questions are actually going to be focused on Rabbi Yanai's opinion. Rabbi Yanai is basically saying that everybody agrees, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, everybody agrees that by the geidel, you must do the geidel, because it says twice, Asher Allah. So that's the main questions over here the Gemara is going to ask. Meisvei, the question is, it says in the Braisa, mitzvah lahagril. There's a mitzvah to make this geidel. But ve'im loy higril, if you did not make the geidel, kosher. Then it's also going to be kosher. You could just decide which animal you want to use for what. So the Gemara says, Bishlei malahach lishne da amrit. Now it's understood who this Braisa would go according to the version that you said, that Ali, but Rabbi Yehuda kula amalei pliga deloi ma'akve. That according to Rabbi Yehuda, everybody agrees that the geidel is not 100. It is not, doesn't have to, must be done, because Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is only what's done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim is ma'akiv. So Hamani Rabbi Yehuda. So this brayso that says that the geidel is only a mitzvah and it's not a must, that's Rabbi Yehuda. But Elo lahach lishna, according to the second version, the amrit that you said, pligi, that there's an argument here regarding the geidel, even according to Rabbi Yehuda. So bishleim l'mandam aloy makve, it's understood according to the opinion, which is Rabbi Yochanan, that says that the geidel is not a must. So Hamani Rabbi Yehuda, this brayso that says that it's only a mitzvah, but it's not a must, so this is Rabbi Yehuda. Only what's in the Kodesh HaKadoshim is ma'akiv, and not what's outside. But according to Rabbi Yanai says that by the geidel, the Torah says twice, Asher Allah, so it must be done. So Hamani, who's this brayso here that says that it's only a mitzvah? So the Gemara says we're going to have to change the pshat in the brayso. Tani, learn in the brayso, mitzvah lahaniach. What the brayso is saying is that it's a mitzvah to, after you do the geidel, it's a mitzvah to take the two lotteries and place it on top of the animal. Even if you didn't place it on top of the animal, it's also going to be okay. That's what the brayso was speaking about. But the geidel itself is a must. According to Rabbi Yanai, it must be done. The brayso was speaking about lahaniach, to place it on the animals. Toshama, there's another brayso where it says mitzvah lahagril ulehizvades. It's a mitzvah to do the geidel, and it's also a mitzvah for the kohen this animal that goes to the Azazel, the Kohen has to confess for Klal Yisrael and all their Avedas. That's the vidui that's done on this animal. So it's a mitzvah to be done. Not loy higril, he did not make a geirel. V'loy yizvada, Kohen did not confess for this animal. Kosher, it's still kosher. So over here again, what do we see? That the whole thing of the geirel is just a mitzvah. But even if it's not done, it's okay. So this is a question of Rabbi Yanai that says that it must be done. Now the Gemara immediately says, just like we said before, that we're not really referring to the actual geirel, but we're referring to taking those lotteries and placing it on the animal. So maybe over here, that's what it means as well. In the Sefer, but what does it say in the end of that Braise? Rab Shimon said, Loi higril kosher. He agrees to the Tanakama that if you did not make the geirel, then it'll be kosher. But lo yizvada, if the Kohen did not do the vidu, he did not confess, then posel. Then it's going to be posel. So now what did Rab Shimon mean when Rab Shimon said that you don't have to do the geirel? My loy higril. What was Rab Shimon saying when he said you don't have to do the geirel? If you're going to say like we were suggesting to say, that loy hiniach, all he meant to say is that you don't have to place it on the animal, but you must do the geirel. The klal that Rab Shimon savar hagrola ma'akva. So you're going to say that Rab Shimon, like the Tanakama, they both hold that you must do the geirel, like Rab Yanai said before. That can't be, because it says in another braise, Vatanya, meis echad mehen. What happens? You have these two goats. One was designated La Hashem, and the other one was designated La Azazel, and one of them dies. So what do you do now? You have to redo the whole thing. So he says, no, maybe chaveiroi shaloi bagrol. So you bring one more animal without a geirel, and you designate it for whatever it has to be, whether La Hashem, whether La Azazel, but you don't have to bring another two animals and do the geirel all over again. And Rashi explains the reason is because if you're going to bring another two animals, so now you have one extra. One of them is not going to be used. So you just bring one more and you designate it for whatever it has to be. Shaloi bagrala, without a geirel, divrei Rab Shimon. So what do you see here? Rab Shimon clearly holds that the geirel is not ma'akiv. So when the Braise uses this expression, in Rab Shimon's words, loy higril kosher, he's not talking only about placing the lotteries on the animal. He's talking about the geirel itself. So just like in the language of Rab Shimon, he's talking about the geirel, and he's saying that it's not a must, it's kosher without the geirel. The same thing is also the Tanakama, seemingly. When the Tanakama also uses the same expression, loy higril, it's kosher, he means to say you don't have to do the geirel. So that's our question of Rabbi Yanai. How does Rabbi Yanai say that everybody agrees that you must do the geirel? So the Gemara explains, no, the pshat here is as follows. Rab Shimon loy yoda mai ka'amri rabbanan. Rab Shimon wasn't sure exactly what the Rabbanon meant to say. When the Rabbanon, which is the Tanakama, says the Lashon that loy higril, it's kosher, what did he mean to say? Were they talking about the actual geirel itself? Or were they talking about the placing of the geirel on the animals? And therefore this is what Rab Shimon was saying. V'hachi ka'amar lahu. This is what Rab Shimon was saying to the Tanakama. If when you say it, when you said that you don't have to do the hagrala, you meant to say literally the hagrala, the actual lottery, that it doesn't have to be done. So then, paligna alaychu b'chada. I only argue on what you're saying regarding one point. He only argues regarding the confession, regarding the vidur, right? The Tanakama said whether you didn't do the hagrala, whether you did not confess, either way it's kosher. And Rab Shimon comes and says, I agree with you that if you don't do the geirel, it's kosher, but you must have the vidui. That's, if you understand the words of the Tanakama, to be speaking about the geirel. But, if when the Tanakama spoke about the hagrala, he did not mean the actual lottery. What he meant to say is, the hanacha, the placing of the lottery on the animals, that's what's not ma'akiv. But the geirel itself is ma'akiv. Then paligna laicho betarti. Then Rab Shimon is coming and saying, I'm arguing on you in 2 points, because I hold that the geirel is not ma'akiv and the confession is ma'akiv. So he's arguing on the Tanakama in 2 points. So therefore, even though in Rab Shimon's lashon it's clear that he's coming to say that the geirel is not ma'akiv, but when the Tanakama says that the geirel is not ma'akiv, not necessarily is that what the Tanakama meant. Maybe when the Tanakama said the geirel is not ma'akiv, he really only meant to say that the hanacha of the geirel, the placing of the geirel on the animal, that's not ma'akiv. But the geirel itself really is ma'akiv. And Rab Shimon is arguing on the Tanakama on that as well. So therefore it's not a question of Rab Yanai. Even according to the Tanakama here, the geidel is ma'akiv. You must do the geidel. Another Braise, the Gemara asks on Abyanai's opinion. Toshema. So it says in the Braise as follows. So before I just read the Braise inside, the Braise is going to be talking about two karbanis that were brought in the Beis HaMikdash. One was the par. It was a bull that was brought for the Kohen Gadol himself to be mechaper on his own averis. Then there's the sa'ir, which was the sa'ir we're speaking about over here, that they had the sa'ir that went LaShem. That was a carbon that was brought to be mechaper on the averis of the Yidden. So the par and the sa'ir that were brought in the Beis HaMikdash, the par was shechted first, and then the sa'ir was shechted afterwards. And the same thing also when it came to the blood that was brought inside the Beis HaMikdash to be sprayed in the places that it has to go. So the Seder, the way it was done was as follows. The zrika of the blood of these two karbanis were done in three different places, 3 different times. First, they were brought inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. They were sprayed there. Then they were also sprayed inside the Heichal, on the curtain, on the pereiches of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. That's when it was done, achas l'mayla, shav l'mata as well. And then they were sprayed on the Mizbeach, the inside Mizbeach, the Mizbeach Hazav. So there were three different Hazahs that were done. And what was always the order? First, they would spray the blood of the par inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then the Soyer inside. Then they would come out, and again, the blood of the par would be sprayed against the pereiches, and then the Soyer. And then on the Mizbeach as well. On the Mizbeach, actually, according to one opinion, they would mix the two bloods together, and then they would spray it on the Mizbeach. According to another opinion, even on the Mizbeach, they would keep them separate, and first the blood of the par, and then the sar. So that was always the order. 3 different stages, but always the blood of the par first, and then the blood of the sar. So now the Braisa says, Tashema, par ma'akiv asar. The par holds back the aveda of the sar being done, meaning that the blood that's sprayed from the par has to be done before the goat. That's the seder, the way it's supposed to be done. The sa'ir, the aveda, the spraying of the blood that's done with the sar, ein ma'akiv asapar. That does not hold back the par. The sar does not come before the par comes first. And then the Braisa concludes and says, what are we talking about? B'matanais shebifnim. We're talking about the blood that has to be sprayed inside. Usually when it says bifnim, it refers into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So now the Gemara wants to understand the pshat in this Braisa. There's 2 parts here, right? It says that the par comes before the sa'ir, and then the Braisa said the sa'ir does not come before the par. So now, bishloime, it's understood when it says par ma'akiv sa'ir, that the par holds back. It has to come before the sa'ir. That's understood. The aktime l'sa'ir mekame par, if you spray the blood of the goat before the bull, l'yavad v'lei klum, so then you've done nothing. You're going to have to do it over again. You're going to have to spray the blood of the par and then do the sa'ir again. That's the order. The par always comes before the sa'ir. So that's that we understand. Elo, the second half of the Braisa where it says, Sa'ir ein ma'akiv esapar, that the blood of the goat does not have to be before the par, before the bull. What's the Braisa talking about? Why would I think that the sa'ir comes before the par? The par always comes before the sa'ir. So what is the Braisa coming to say that the sa'ir does not have to be done before the par? It sounds like that there is something of the sa'ir that does have to be before, and it's saying that it doesn't have to be. We're not particular about that. Which case is it that the sa'ir has to be before? What are we speaking about? So the Gemara now suggests as follows. Now if you're going to say what the Braisa is saying is as follows. The aktim matona is the par beheichol, mekame matona is the sa'ir bifnim. If what happened was that he did the zrika of the par inside the heichal before the matanis, before the zrika of the blood of the sa'ir that's done bifnim inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So as I said before, the seder was inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. First was the par, and then was the sa'ir. Then you came out, and then you did first the par, and then the sa'ir. So what happens if he sprayed the blood of the par inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, did not spray the blood of the goat yet, the sa'ir inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and he comes out and he's spraying the blood of the par outside, and he forgot to do the blood of the sa'ir inside. So this is the case where the sa'ir, the blood of the sa'ir in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, comes before the spraying of the blood of the par outside. Maybe that's what we're speaking about. And in such a case, the Braisa is saying that it's not going to be ma'akiv. Even if you skipped the blood of the sa'ir in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, it's okay. But the Gemara says, why not? Chukah ksiv buhu. In the Parsha, it says chukah. And chukah, according to everybody, for sure refers to the Aveda that's done in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. You can't skip the blood that's supposed to be sprayed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. If you skip it and then you do the Aveda outside first, it's not going to work. So we can't say that the Braisa, in the second half of the Braisa, when it says, Soir ein ma'akiv esapar, that even if you skip the blood that was supposed to be sprayed in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, that it's going to be okay. That can't be. So that's not what the Braisa is speaking about. So what are we speaking about? Lav, don't you think the case over here is the aktim matana is the par bifnim? He sprayed the blood of the par inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim, nekame hagrola, before the geidel of the soir was done. The geidel of the soir was supposed to be done before the blood was sprayed inside, and he sprayed the blood of the par inside before the geidel was done. And that's what the Braisa is saying. Soir ein ma'akiv v'sapar. The geidel of the soir is not going to be ma'akiv even if you did the spraying of the blood ahead of this geidel. That's the pshat in the second half of the Braisa. If so, the Gemara says, umidisidra loy ma'akva. So if the order of the time when the geidel is supposed to be done, we're not particular about that. So ikra hagrala nami loy ma'akva. So the geidel itself is also, we're not particular about it. That's what it seems. If we don't look at the order of the time when it should be done, so the Gemara right now assumes that the same thing applies also to the geidel itself, that we're not particular about the geidel being done. So this is the question on Rabbi Yanai's opinion. Rabbi Yanai said that everybody agrees, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Nechemia, that you must have the geidel done. In this Braisa, the only way to explain the pshat of this Braisa when it says Soir ein ma'akiv v'sapar is that the seder, the geidel of the soir, does not have to be done before you do the zrika of the par inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So that seems to be saying that the whole entire geidel we're not particular about. So the Gemara answers, no. Loi, that's not necessarily the pshat. What we could say is the aktim matana is the par b'mizbeach mekame the soir beheichel. What we're speaking about over here is, as I mentioned, after they did the zrika on the pereiches inside the heichel, then they sprayed it on the mizbeach. So what he did was he sprayed the blood of the par on the mizbeach before he sprayed the blood of the soir in the heichel on the pereiches. And why is that not ma'akiv? When the Braisa says that's not ma'akiv, Rabbi Yehuda, it's following the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar, Rabbi Yehuda says, Dvarim hanasim bebigdei lavam b'chutz, any aveda, even if it's done with the white garments, but it's outside of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, loy ma'akvi. They're not, the Seder is not ma'akiv. So therefore, even if you change the Seder, it's okay. That would be the pshat in this Braisa. But the Gemara doesn't accept this because it clearly says, Vaha b'matanes shebifnim katani. The Braisa clearly says that if you switch the order and you do the zrika of the sa'ir before you do the zrika of the par, that is before the sa'ir, that it's going to be okay. And what are we talking about? Matanes shebifnim. So the pshat that the Gemara just suggested was that we're talking about the aveda that's done in the heichal, not in bifnim, not in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. But that's not what it says in the Braisa. Elo, so the Gemara says another two answers here to explain this Braisa. One answer is Ha Mani, who is this Braisa following? Rab Shimoni. It's following Rab Shimon's opinion, the Oma Hagrola Loy Ma'akve. Rab Shimon says that the geidel is not, we're not particular, the geidel does not have to be done. Meaning what the Gemara is saying is we had the opinion of Rab Shimon before. Rab Shimon says that geidel does not have to be done. Rab Yehuda, according to Rab Yanai, Rab Yehuda and Rab Nechemia, they hold that the geidel must be done. But Rab Shimon says the geidel doesn't have to be done. So therefore this Braisa here that's saying that you could spray the blood before the geidel is done is Rab Shimon's opinion that holds that the geidel is not necessary. Another pshat we could say, La'olam Rabbi Yehudi. This Braisa here is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And the truth is Rabbi Yehuda holds the geidel must be done. That's what Rabbi Yana explained. The order of when the geidel is done, that we're not particular about. But hagrala miya ma'akiv. But the actual geidel itself is ma'akiv, it must be done. The only problem we had was the Gemara before was assuming that if we're not particular about the timing of when the geidel is done, we're also not particular about the geidel itself. But now the Gemara is saying not necessarily all those two go together. Even if the timing of the geidel is not something that we're particular about, but the actual geidel, according to Rabbi Yanai, must be done. Okay, now according to Rashi's pshat, the Gemara, when it says here, it continues, Va'ozdu l'tamayu. The Gemara is going back to something that it spoke about before, which is the machlokes of in the Braisa between the Tanakama and Rab Shimon regarding the vidui, the confession. Does the confession on the goat have to be done or not? So their argument regarding this confession is following their opinions. The Tanya we learned in the Braisa, it says regarding this soil that's going out to the Azazel. So the pasuk says, Yoma Chai Lifnei Hashem. It should stand there and it should be alive in front of the Eibishter. So why is the pasuk here saying Chai? That's what Rashi says. The main diak of the Gemara is, why does it say Chai that has to stand alive in front of the Eibishter? L'chaper olav, to be mechaper. Ad masa yeh zakuk lamet Chai. Until when does it have to be there alive? So one opinion is, the first opinion of Achas Matan Domei Shel Chaveira, it has to be there until you spray the blood of the other animal, of the other goat that was Lashem. Divrei Rab Yehuda. Rab Shimon says, Achas Vidui Dvarim. It has to be there until the time of the Vidui. That's the time, that's until when it has to stand over there. So Rab Shimon's one that said before that the Vidui is, if you don't do the Vidui, it's possible. So the question that they're arguing about is L'chaper Olav. What does L'chaper Olav mean? Tanakama says it doesn't mean the Vidui. The vidui doesn't necessarily have to be done. It means until you give the blood from the other animal. Chaveiroi. Rab Shimon says, no, l'chaper olav. L'chaper olav refers to the kapara on this animal that you're sending to the azazel. What's the kapara on this animal? There is no blood that you're spraying. It refers to the vidui. What's the source of their machlokes? Kedetanya, like we learned in a different brayse. L'chaper, when it says here the expression of kapara, so one opinion is b'kaparas damim akasim medaber. Kapara, as usual, regarding karbonis, it speaks about the blood. When you spray the blood on the mizbeach, that's the main kapara. V'cheinu aimer, like you see in another pasuk where it says, also here regarding Yom Kippur, v'chila michaper es hakodesh, and he finishes doing the kapara in kodesh, which refers to the blood. Mala malam b'kaparas damim. That pasuk speaks about the blood that's sprayed inside. Avkan b'kaparas damim. So here, regarding the sar that's going out la azazel, even though there's no blood regarding this animal, but the kapara you have to wait with this animal until the blood of the other animal is sprayed. Divrei Rab Yehuda. Rab Shimon says l'chaper olav. When it says the kapara for this animal going to the azazel, there's no blood. So the kapara's dvarim akasav medaber. The kapara is the words, the confession. That's the kapara for this animal. So this is the source of the machlokes, whether the confession is ma'akiv or not. Rashi actually says that this little piece of Gemara about the confession should be before, when the Gemara quoted this machlokes of Rab Shimon and the Tanakama. It doesn't belong in this place in the Gemara, because the Gemara right now, Toshema, is going to continue going back to the machlokes regarding the geidel, whether the geidel is ma'akiv or not. Toshema, so going back to that machlokes. So the Gemara brings another brayse. Shalu Talmidav es Rabbi Akiva. The Talmidim asked Rabbi Akiva the following question: Allah b'smoil. What happens if Hashem's name for the carbon that's going to be Lashem came up in the left hand of the Kohen Gadol? And as we saw in the beginning of the Perek, when it comes in his left hand, it's not such a good sign. They wanted it to come up in his right hand. So Mao sheyachzer liyamin, should he switch it? You can switch it from his left to his right hand. Change the geidel. Could it be done? Amalehen, Rabbi Akiva said to them, Al titnu makam letzadaikim lirdeis. Don't give a place for the tzadaikim to rule. As Rashi explains, the tzadaikim, they would see such a kind of behavior that they're switching the geidel from one hand to another. They're going to say, look, the chachamim are allowing to play around with what it says in the Torah. The geidel comes in the left and they switch it to the right, and they're going to come to have these arguments. So don't allow them to have this argument. So the Gemara says, what do we see here? Taimeh, the only reason Rabbi Akiva said this is not acceptable, you don't want the tzadaikim to rule. If not for that concern, even if the geidel came in the left, you can switch it to the right and it doesn't matter. So the question on Rabbi Yanai is, Rabbi Yanai says that the geidel were very particular about doing the geidel. You must do it. So if so, the kavate smile, if the geidel came up in his left hand, so the behem on the left is supposed to be Lashem, how could you switch the geidel? If you're switching it, that basically means you're not using the geidel at all. So here is a question on Rabbi Yanai. So Rava answers, no, you misunderstood what they really meant to ask. This is what they were saying. If the geidel came up in the left hand, not to switch just the geidel, to switch the geidel in his left hand and the animal on his left, to switch both of them to the right side. So we're not going to change the geidel. We're going to use the geidel, but we're going to change everything. We're going to take the geidel and the animal to the right side. Are you allowed to do that? And on that as he answered them, when you switch it, so then it's going to cause the tzedaikim to have tinus and they could rule. But you must use the geidel according to Rabbi Yanai's opinion. Tashama, the Gemara brings another braise where it says as follows. Ilu nemar, if in the pasuk where it speaks about the geidel, it would say, es hasoir asher olav, that the soir which on it. So if you look in the pasuk, it says v'hikrev arayin es hasoir asher olah olav hageidel. It came up on it, the geidel. So the Torah uses the words Allah. So the Dada Gemara is saying if it would not say Allah, if it would just say the soir asher olav, then ayisi aimer, I would say yanichenu olav. That you have to, after you make the geidel, you have to place the lottery on the animal, on the body of the animal. If not, it's not good. That's what it seems like the Braisa is saying. Talmud Loimar, so the pasuk comes and says Allah, that the geidel has to come up. You have to take the geidel out of the box, and kivin sha'Allah, once you took the lottery out of the box, shuv ein tzarech. You don't have to place the lottery onto the body of the animal itself. So the Braisa is saying that the hanocha, placing it on the body of the animal, does not have to be done. So the Gemara now explains this. Lemai, what is this Braisa coming to say? Mitzvah. If you're going to say that the Braisa is not speaking about whether this must be done, whether you must place it on the animal. The Braisa is just talking about the mitzvah. Is this b'chlal a mitzvah to be done? B'chlal, so would that mean the hanocha mitzvah nami loy, that there's no mitzvah at all to place the lottery on the animal itself? That can't be. We know that it's at least a mitzvah to place the lottery on the animal. Elolav la'akiv. What the Braisa is coming to say is, do you must place the lottery on the animal? And that the Braisa says no, because it says in the Torah Allah. So the main thing is that you make the geidel, but the placing it on the body of the animal is not makif. We're not particular about that. That's what the Braisa is saying. But what do we see from here? Shma, from this we could understand hagrala makve. The actual geidel itself we are particular about. That's the language of the pasuk. Allah, the aliyah of the geidel, the actual geidel itself we are particular about. So the geidel is ma'akiv and hanocha le ma'akiv. It's only placing the geidel on the animal which is not ma'akiv. So this braisa is actually a proof to Rabbi Yanai's opinion that the geidel is ma'akiv. So Rava says, no, you're misunderstanding the pshat in this braisa. This braisa is not speaking at all about the geidel versus the hanocha. This is what the braisa is speaking about. If we would only say the words Allah and I would not say the word Allah, then I would say that this halacha that you're supposed to place the lottery on the body of the animal, you have to place it on it at shas shchita. You have to leave it on the animal until the time of the shchita, because it says in the Torah, Allah, it has to be on the animal. So therefore, Tamad Loima Asher Allah, that you took it up, you took it out as a geidel, which means Kivin Sha'Allah Shuven Itzarech, that you take it out as a geidel, you place it right then on the body of the animal. You don't have to leave it on the body of the animal until the time of the shechita. So it's not talking about the geidel itself. You can't bring any raya over here, but again, to the geidel itself could be the geidel itself. We're not particular about. What the Braisa is speaking about is this halacha of hanocha, of placing the lottery on the body of the animal. Do you have to place it on the body of the animal until the shechita, or just at the time when you make the geidel? Okay, the last raya that the Gemara will here actually finally bring a conclusive raya to this whole machlokes. Tashema.
If you're not mukhiv in the hagrala, then you can't be mekayim kivin shalosh uven yitzarech.
Right, and a chanami. So it's only in a case when the geidel is done, according to Rabbi Yechon. When it's done, the question is, do you have to leave it on it the whole time, or only until b'shas ma'isa when it's done? So it says in the pasuk v'asahu chatos, that you have to make this carbon into a chatos. So how do you designate this animal that's going to be la Hashem for a chatos? Ha-geidel aiseyu chatos. The geidel is what makes it into a chatos. That's what it says in the pasuk. If you look at the whole pasuk, it says v'ikrev aranes hasoira she'olah olav ha-geidel Hashem v'asahu chatos. The geidel makes it a chatos. Ve'ein Hashem aiseyu chatos. If you'll just call it, you'll decide to call it by name that this belongs to the Eibishter, that's not going to make it a chatos. You need the geidel. So the Braisa is clearly saying you must have the geidel. And the Braisa now explains, what the chiddush here is. Sheyachol, I would think to say, v'haloi dinu, I'll give you the following kal v'chomer. Uvma b'makim shaloi kiddush ha'geidel. If when it comes to other karbanis, where there's no geidel, you don't use any geidel. Rashi here brings, there's lamashal a zav, a zava, a yeldis. They have to bring also 2 karbanis, a chatas and a oila. How do you designate what's a chatas and what's a oila? There's no geidel. We don't find a geidel any other time. The kayin by mouth says this is a chatas, this is an oila. So when it comes to other places where the geidel does not work, kiddush Hashem, calling it by name and designating it does work. Makayim shekiddush hageidel. Here where the Torah says that the geidel does work, so for sure, the Kayin designating it just by mouth and saying this is a Lashem and this is La Azazel, shouldn't that be effective? Therefore, the pasuk is particular and it says ve'asahu chatos hageidel isayil chatos. It says there in the pasuk hageidel ve'asahu chatos, that only the geidel makes it a chatos. Ve'in Hashem isa chatos. And calling it by name will not make it into a chatos. So this is a clear b'raisa that says that you must make the geidel. There's no other way to determine what should be the chatos, la Hashem, and what should be la Azazel. Now the Gemara says, Stam Sifra. This is a b'raisa that's from the Sifra, which is also known as the Teres Kayanim. Who's the b'raisa in the Sifra? Mani Rabbi Yehuda. We have a rule that all the b'raisas of the Teres Kayanim is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Ve'katani, and what does it say there? Hageidel oisa chatos. Only the geidel will make it into a chatos. Ve'in Hashem oisa chatos. Just calling the name that it's a chatos will not make it into a chatos. Alme. So from here I clearly see that hagrala ma'akve, that the geidel is ma'akiv, because this is Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Going back to the beginning of the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that holds only the aveda done inside the Kodesh HaKadoshim are we particular about, that it has to be done in the order that the Torah says. And still Rabbi Yehuda here is saying regarding the geidel, which is done outside in the Azara, that you must do the geidel. It must be because Rabbi Yehuda agrees that the geidel is an exception. Even though other avedas outside we're not particular about, but the geidel we are particular about, then it is ma'akev. Tiyufta demanda ama agrala le'ma'akve tiyufta. So this refutes the opinion of Rabbi Yechanan that said that the geidel is not ma'akev. It's totally refuted his opinion. The only thing is, the pasuk that the Gemara brings here is different than the pasuk that it brought in the beginning. In the beginning, the Gemara brought a pasuk Asher Allah, that it says it twice. Here, the Gemara is saying the pasuk is ve'asahu chatos, that you must make the geidel a chatos. I mentioned a few times that in the Chassidus, in the Maimonim, it says, and you see it here in the Gemara very strongly, this point. Why are we so particular about the geidel? According to Rabbi Yehuda, there's only 2 things that are ma'akiv: the avedis in the Kodesh HaKadoshim and the geidel. All the other avedis, the seder of what's done in Yom Kippur, we're not particular about. Why those 2 things? Because the geidel represents the whole inyan of the aved of Yom Kippur. The geidel means that the kohen is not using his seichel and he's relying just on the Eibishter that's making the geidel. That's the special thing, dafka on Yom Kippur. That's why this thing is ma'akiv.